Good evening. I'm Marilyn Cargill, Vice President for Financial Aid Services at VSAC, and I would like to welcome you to VSAC Shows You How. Tonight's webinar will focus on how to file your Vermont grant application and how to apply for VSAC administered scholarships. On the screen, you should see 3 poll questions to help our presenter tailor her comments to what is most useful to you. If you haven't already answered the questions, please do that now. Tonight, we plan to walk through the entire application process from entering your demographic information to signing and submitting your applications. Sometimes I get the question, is it really worth filling these forms out? Last year, approximately 3,000 Vermonters received over $7.5 million in scholarships through VSAC, and VSAC awarded just shy of $20 million in state grants. So in answer to that question, is it worth it? The answer is yes. We are frequently asked to explain the difference between a grant and a scholarship. Grants are based on financial need. They're based on the information you will provide on the free application for federal student aid, along with the Vermont grant application, which we're talking about tonight. Scholarships, on the other hand, are a competitive process. It's not just about financial need. There's other factors that come into play, including whether or not you have a particular talent, do you live in a certain geographic area, do you belong to certain groups, do you plan to major in certain things? So there's lots of different reasons that students are considered for scholarships and are able to compete for them. And our expert tonight will walk you through that. Filling out a Vermont grant application normally takes less than 30 minutes. Tonight, it may take us a little bit longer because we really want to be sure to answer your questions. So let's talk about how to ask questions. To raise a question from the Zoom platform, just type your question into the Q&A section. If you're watching from the Facebook platform, just type your question in the comment. We also plan to have some time at the end of the presentation for any additional questions that you might have. As we're working through the questions, if you ask a question that I know the presenter is going to talk about in a few minutes, I will wait for that part of the presentation to come up. So we will get to just as many of your questions as we possibly can. If there are questions that we don't get to tonight, we will send out a Q&A with the questions and answers to all of tonight's registrants early next week, along with a recording of tonight's show. So let's get started by meeting tonight's presenter. It really is my pleasure to introduce you to Miranda Roth. Miranda is the supervisor of the Vermont Grant and Scholarship Division, and she has been helping Vermont families apply for state aid for over 20 years. She's also the parent of a college student and has seen the financial aid process through that lens as well. Before I turn this over to Miranda, could we please see the answer to the poll questions? All right, so primarily we have parents on tonight looking at this process, Miranda, which is not a big surprise. And 25% of our audience are students or students with their parents. Only 17% of these families have already completed a Vermont Grant or Unified Scholarship application in the past. So you've got a little bit of expertise with us this evening, but the majority are going to do this for the very first time. And then last but not least, which is great, 67% of you have already completed the free application for federal student aid. So there's going to be a lot of things that Miranda is going to reference that are going to make a lot of sense to you because you've gone through that process. For those of you who haven't completed the free application for federal student aid, we did a webinar last month on that, which is available on the VSAC website under resources. And that might be something for you to take a look at in the upcoming week. So Miranda, if you're ready, I'm certainly ready to turn this over to you.
I am ready. Thank you. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I thought I'd start with just a quick overview of what we will cover. Marilyn explained the difference between grants and scholarships, so I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper and give you a little bit of information about the Vermont Grant and VSAC assisted scholarships specifically. Both of the applications for the grant and the scholarships are located within my VSAC, which is our secure account access area. That's on vsac.org. So I'll give you a little introduction to that as well. Then we'll jump right into completing the Vermont Grant application, followed by completing the Unified Scholarship application, or the USA for short. And then most scholarships require at least one additional document, like an essay or a letter of recommendation. And those can be uploaded right through the student's MyVSAC account as well. And I'll show you how to upload one of those. So let's get started. The Vermont Grant is available to Vermont residents who do not yet have their first bachelor's degree, who are attending a college that is eligible for federal financial aid, and who are enrolled full or part-time in a certificate or undergraduate degree program. So the grant is need-based, meaning it's based on your family's financial information and the cost of your school. And we get most of the family's financial information from the FAFSA, from the free application for federal student aid. For this current school year, Vermont Grant awards range from $1,000 to $12,800, and eligible Vermont students received on average just over $2,100 for the year in a Vermont Grant. If you are enrolled part-time, the award amount is prorated, but the grant is still available to you. And so for those of you who may be adult students who are balancing college and work, if you're taking a couple of classes each semester, the grant is still available to you as long as you haven't received your first bachelor's degree. You apply for the Vermont Grant by completing the Vermont Grant application, which we'll do tonight. And as I mentioned, we get a lot of the financial information from the FAFSA, which is why we were curious how many of you had already completed that FAFSA application. There's nothing special you need to do to get the FAFSA information to VSAC, as long as the student listed their state of legal residence as Vermont on the FAFSA. VSAC will receive that information directly from the federal government once the FAFSA has been processed. And then we'll match that information up with your Vermont Grant application, or hold on to it to match it up for when you do complete the grant application.
Miranda, I've got a question already.
Great.
If a student is a resident of Vermont but plans to go to school out of state, are the grants and the scholarships discussed tonight applicable?
They are, as long as the reason that the student is leaving the state is to go to school. So for dependent students, the student's residency stays with the parent. So as long as the parents are still Vermont residents, then the Vermont Grant and the scholarships are still considered, you're still considered a Vermont resident for those purposes. And for self-supporting students, if you had been a Vermont resident at the time that you had applied and you're leaving Vermont to go to school, then the grant and the scholarships can go with you as well. If you happen to stop out of school and you stay out of state, then that might change circumstances. Any other questions? Yeah.
One more I want to ask you. What about a university in Canada?
The Vermont Grant can go to a college or university, and scholarships as well, in Canada, as long as that college or university in Canada is eligible for federal financial aid. So let's talk about VSAC assisted scholarships. VSAC assists with over 120 different scholarships worth more than $7 million. And all of those scholarships are listed in our Scholarships for Vermonters booklet, which is available on vsac.org. You can see the cover of the booklet here up on your screen. There's a PDF of the booklet that's available online that you can download or view online if you choose to, but the paper booklet is also available at high schools throughout the state, as well as local libraries and agencies. There's also an option, and I'll show you in just a bit, where on our website where you can request that we mail you a paper version as well. Each scholarship has different eligibility and documentation requirements, and each scholarship in the booklet has a scholarship description. Within that scholarship description is a little background on the scholarship, maybe why it was created, and then a list of eligibility requirements and a list of required documents. And so it's very important that students, even now, start looking through that booklet and read through each of the scholarship descriptions and see, start checking off which scholarships they meet the eligibility requirements for. And that's kind of the first step in thinking about applying for scholarships. The Unified Scholarship application is used to apply for any of the VSAC assisted scholarships, and it's just one application that can be used for as many of those scholarships as the student finds that they might be eligible for. So you may find 4 or 5 scholarships that you want to apply for, and you'll use just the one Unified Scholarship application. As I mentioned, some of the scholarships also require additional documentation, like an essay or a letter of recommendation or a transcript. And a lot of them require, many of them require essays and one recommendation letter. And you just need to submit one essay and just one recommendation letter. VSAC will make sure that copies get sent to each of the scholarship committees for the scholarships that you apply for. So it's not like you need to submit a copy for each scholarship that you're thinking of applying for. There is a hard deadline for the Unified Scholarship application and all required documents. You might be able to see it up on your screen. For the 2022-2023 academic year, the scholarship deadline is February 11th. 2022. And that means that the Unified Scholarship application and all required documents need to be submitted by midnight on February 11th in order to be considered for the scholarships that you want to apply for. So students, think about now completing the Unified Scholarship application and then start thinking about what you might want to include in your essay, and think about who you might want to have write your recommendation letters, and ask them even now, maybe give them a deadline a week or 2 before our scholarship deadline to have the recommendation letter written for you so that it's sure to be submitted by that scholarship deadline. So as I mentioned, both of the Unified Scholarship application and the Vermont Grant application are available through our secure account access area on vsac.org. That's called My VSAC. So I'm going to take you there now. I'm just going to switch screens. And let me show you first vsac.org. And this is our homepage. There's a lot of great information on here. So when you have some time, definitely take a look at all of the different options. There's information on saving and planning for college, as well as paying for college. Down here, kind of in the middle of the screen, you can see Explore Grants. When you click this, you're brought to an area where there's some more information about the Vermont Grant, so you can get a little bit more detail on than what I just provided to you, and as well as some information on federal grants that may be available. And then right next to it is Find Scholarships. And if you click here, you're brought to the scholarships area where there's more information, some more on the right-hand side, as well as a video about how to search for scholarships. But if you scroll down just slightly, in this box under Find Scholarships, you'll see the link for the VSAC Scholarship Booklet. You can download a PDF version here and view it online, or you can click this link to order a paper version to be mailed to you. So
Maria, when you start the application process, I'm assuming you'll enlarge the screen.
I will. Yes, thank you. Yep. So I'm going to scroll back up. So no matter what page you go to, the My VSAC button always stays in the upper right-hand corner. So When you're ready to apply for the Vermont Grant or the Unified Scholarship application, the student should click the My VSAC button, and that will bring you to the My VSAC homepage. And here you have two options. If you're brand new to VSAC, you will want to register for a My VSAC account. And that is a couple-step process, but you start by clicking register now, and then you follow the steps. And basically the steps are providing this, it's the student that will be creating a My VSAC account. The Vermont Grant application and the Unified Scholarship application are in the student's name. So it's the student that will create the My VSAC account. And the student creates a username, which is really their email address, and then gives us their name, their date of birth, and their social security number. And what that's basically doing behind the scenes is it's creating an account for the student at VSAC that we will then tie the Vermont Grant application and the Unified Scholarship application to. Once the student has done that piece and clicked submit, they will then receive an email that will includes a link that the student will click to create a password and a security question. Once they've done that, then they're able to log in. So a couple of tricks or tips. As I mentioned, the My VSAC username, and it reminds you up here as well in this box, the My VSAC username is the student's email address. So it's important that the student uses an email that they will have access to for 2 to 4, maybe more years to come. So we recommend not using a high school email address, because typically that email address is closed once the student graduates from high school. Some families may create an email address just to use for the admissions and the financial aid process for the student. That may be one way to manage that, knowing that all emails related to admissions or financial aid will go to this one email address. You just have to remember to check it. And then if you're a family that has multiple students attending college at the same time, each student needs their own My VSAC account. And therefore, each student will also need their own email account, since the My VSAC username is their email. So I think that's about it about My VSAC. Let's log in. So I'm going to use a test student tonight. Our student's name tonight is Susan Smith, and she has already registered and created a My VSAC account. So she's going to log in now. So as you'll see here, maybe if my screen's big enough, my browser kind of pre-populated with her name. It's another tip just to be aware of is sometimes your browser will want to do that. And if you have multiple usernames, sometimes the browser gets confused with the passwords. So just be careful when if your browser does do that to you, maybe retype the email in the username and retype the password just to make sure that you're logging in with the correct person's My VSAC account, especially if you have multiple students in the household. So she is going to click log in, and she will be brought to her My VSAC dashboard. I had been logged in a little too long, so it just needed to refresh for a moment. So when the student logs in, she should see welcome and then her name at the top. If you see anybody else's name there, you'll want to log out and log back in with a different My VSAC username, most likely. So as Susan continues her relationship with VSAC, she'll gain access to more and more of these areas. Tonight, we're going to work specifically with grants, and then eventually work with VSAC assisted scholarships. So in the work with grants area, she can submit an application, view her to-do list, which we'll see in a moment, and then check on her awards once those happen. So I'm going to click work with grants. And this is going to bring her to a page that lists all of the applications that are available to her to complete. Now, for the couple of you that had already submitted a Vermont Grant application or a Unified Scholarship application, this view may look a little different than the view that you have. Susan has no applications with us, so we don't have a lot of information to share with her, where those of you that have a history with VSAC, we have a little bit more information that we can show you. So your view is just a little different, but you would still look for submit application, and any of the applications that are available will be listed there for you. So Susan is going to be attending college next September, so September 2022, and she's going to complete the 2022-2023 Vermont Grant application. So she's going to click Submit Application. And this will bring her to the actual application. You'll notice this first page is pre-populated for her. It has her name, her social security number, and her date of birth. And then a big warning that if you don't see your information here, you've probably logged in with somebody else's My VSAC account. So you want to log out and start over. This is pre-populated from what she provided to VSAC when she registered for her and created her My VSAC account. The other thing she'll want to check, or you will want to check, is that the date of birth and the social security number that is here is accurate. Sometimes in the quickness of creating the My VSAC account, typos happen, and you realize once you get here that that social security number is not correct. If you realize that, don't submit the application yet. Give VSAC a call, and we will delete that My VSAC account that was created, and you can create a new one with the correct social security number. But this is all correct for Susan. So she's going to click Save and Continue. The next two pages are instruction pages that give Susan a little bit of information about making sure she's completing the right application, and about some eligibility requirements, as well as whose information might be requested on the application. She's going to click through Save and Continue once she's read those. And this is the how to apply and who is eligible, and then the financial information. So if when you completed the FAFSA, you remember you were asked some questions about your age, your marital status, if you were working on your first bachelor's degree, and those determined whether or not parental information was required. It's the same process for the Vermont Grant application. So if parent information was required on the FAFSA, then it will be required on the Vermont Grant application. We're going to click Save and Continue. And now she's to the actual application questions. So this page is just gathers some more demographic information about Susan. So she's going to click through and enter her gender, mailing address, and phone number. These drop downs, you can use the drop down to select, or you can, for this one in particular, you can enter a V and then Vermont will pre-populate. We're going to enter her phone number, and then we ask if this is a cell phone. In the future, if potentially we may be able to send out texts related to your Vermont grant, then we'll know that we can use this number with your consent. Here, Susan's email address is pre-populated, and again, we just want this to be not a high school address, something she'll have access to for a while. As her Vermont grant application progresses, VSAC will send her emails related to her grant application. We'll let her know if there's anything, we'll let her know to check. We'll send her an email that she should log into her My VSAC account to see if there's additional information that we might need from her. When we determine her Vermont grant eligibility, we will send her an email to log into My VSAC to view the amount of her award. So it's important that that's an email address that she can check often. And then the Vermont Grant is only available to Vermont residents. So we do ask, are you a Vermont resident? Just going to click yes and click save and continue.
Miranda, we are getting a request to see if you could make that screen even slightly larger.
Okay.
Thank
Try
you.
that, but let me know if it needs to go any bigger. And so we ask if she's a Vermont resident and then how long has she lived here? She's lived here since birth. You'll notice also that the slashes pre-populate for you, so there's no need to enter the dash in your birthday. And then we ask what county she lives in. So down here at the bottom, you can see as we continue moving on page by page that these page numbers continue to increase. If she ever wants to go back and change an answer, she can do that just by clicking on the particular link for the page. So you should use those links rather than the back button or your browser back button. If you use the browser back button, unfortunately, the application doesn't like that. You may receive an error message. But if that happens, or if you get interrupted in the middle and you need to leave the application and you click exit application without submitting, the information that you've entered up to this page will be saved. And then when you log back into My VSAC and click on the application again, you can navigate forward to get to this page and then start from there. And we ask what the name of the high school from which she's graduated from or will graduate from. And again, you can enter, like, type of the start of the letter of the high school name, and then it will jump you to that section, or you can scroll in the drop down. And then her anticipated enrollment status during next year, so 2022, 2023, she's going to be full-time. And then her year in college, and she is going to be a first-year student. Some of you may be familiar with the early college program that's at VTC and the Vermont state colleges. That's where the student completes their senior year of high school and their first year of college at the same time. That is what this question is asking. So in the 2022-2023 school year, will you be enrolled in your senior year of high school and your first year of college at the same time? And that is not the case for Susan. So she's going to click no. And then she's going to click save and continue. Now these next questions determine if Susan will need to provide parent information. And were you the applicant born before January 1st, 1999? She was not. As of today, are you married or in a civil union partnership? No. At the beginning of 2022-2023, will you be working on a master's or doctorate program? She will not. She's working on her first bachelor's degree. Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, or are you currently serving on active duty? She is not. Do you now or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2023? She does not. And this is a very similar question. Does she have dependents during that same time frame that she will provide support for? And she does not.
Miranda, a quick question on something that you just said. So if someone is taking two classes, I'm thinking dual enrollment perhaps, but someone's taking two classes at CCB during their senior year, do they still type, no, they're not enrolled in college and high school at the same time next year?
Correct. If they're taking the classes now, the question is asking about during next school year starting next September. Just a couple more questions to determine whose information will continue on here. At any time since you turned age 13, were both your parents deceased, or were you in foster care or a dependent or ward of the court? No. And again, some of those of you that have completed the FAFSA, these should look very familiar to you. These are the same questions that are on the FAFSA. We may have combined a couple of them, but most of them are exactly the same. And are you or were you an emancipated minor as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? No. Are you or were you in a legal guardianship as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? No. And then this last one is to identify if the student was an unaccompanied youth who was homeless by, determined to be homeless by any of these directors or liaisons. She was not. And then lastly, some students are unable to provide parent information due to very extenuating circumstances, and they work with their college financial aid office to request a dependency override, which is basically waiving the need for parent information. And it's done, as I said, in special circumstances. But we recognize that if they have those circumstances for the FAFSA, they likely will have those same circumstances and inability to provide parent information on the grant application. So we add this last question to ask if the student has applied for a dependency override through their financial aid office. If they answer yes to this, then that will waive the need for parent information on this application. We may just follow up for additional information in the future. But she is going to answer no and click save and continue. So notice at the top in bright red it says, please answer these questions about the same parents for whom you provided information on the FAFSA. And then this section asks for basically the asset information that is not provided on the FAFSA. So home value, farm value, and business value, and home debt, farm debt, and business debt. For any of these questions and any questions earlier on in the application, this little question mark circle can be clicked to learn a little bit more about what we're trying to ask you. So if we click this over, it explains what we're looking for when we ask for present resale value of a parent's home. We're looking for the parents to report the fair market value. So what would you sell your home for if you were to put it on the market today? And it's your best estimate. Some families may look at homes that have sold in the area that are comparable to theirs, for example. So she's going to enter $250,000. Her parents owe, so the current unpaid mortgage. Principal only, don't include interest, but you can include a home equity that you have borrowed against it or a second mortgage. And then the present resale value of a parent's farm, excluding the home. So for many Vermont families, the home and the farm are on the same land, same property. We're looking for you to try to separate that out the best that you can. So think about the total value of everything, and then what percentage would you apply to the home of the value and the debt, and then everything else would apply to the farm. But in this case, she does not, her parents do not own a farm, so she's going to enter 0. And then on the FAFSA, you may have remembered that the parent's business was reported if it had more than 100 employees. So we just ask straight, we take the business value and the business debt straight from the grant application. And so we ask again, in this case, it's any size business that should be reported here. But her parents do not own a business, so she's going to enter 0 for the value and the debt. No, go ahead.
If a student is currently in an early college year now, will they enter that they're a freshman or a sophomore on this form?
On this form, they would enter that they were, because they're completing it next year, they will enter that they were a sophomore. If the student is in an early college program now, make sure you've completed the FAFSA and the Vermont Grant application for the 2021-2022 academic year. So for this year, where they're enrolled in that early college program. These figures, you'll notice there's no decimals or cents or commas included. So it's just straight numbers only. And this is actually the last set of questions that Susan needs to answer. She's going to click save and continue. And what's next is just the certification section. So basically certifying that all the information she provided was correct, knowing that we authorizing us to automatically renew this application if we can, in future years so that she doesn't need to apply again. And knowing that we may share information with colleges and universities. So she should read through this section. And then she's going to, by checking yes, she's agreeing to that certification. And this is really her signature. So you may remember on the FAFSA, you needed a PIN or a number to be able to sign electronically. You don't need that for the grant. Click save and continue. And then this whole section is what the parents should read through. It's the same information, acknowledging that everything's correct and giving us authorization. And at least one custodial parent must sign. And again, by checking yes and entering their information, that is considered the signature. So Susan's parent, Sarah, is going to enter her first name and last name, and then her social security number. And her email address. And then she's going to scroll down, click save and continue, and there's one more step. So here we give a summary of everything that Susan just entered on her application. And so Susan should go through and review all of this information, make sure it's all correct. If she wants to change anything, she still can. The application has not been submitted yet. As she continues to scroll down, she'll still see the page numbers at the bottom, and she can navigate back. It's not always easy to remember what page a certain question was on, but we do tell you up here so that you can navigate. If you wanted to change the home value, for example, you could go back to page 9 down here and then continue on through the application. This is also her chance to print the application or the answers that she provided on the application if she wants to. So this link will allow that. But everything looks good for Sarah. She's going to click submit. So as long as you see the what's next page, the student knows the application has been completed. So we tell you a little bit more information here. So complete the FAFSA if you haven't already. Watch your email and your to-do list, which I'll show you in a moment, because we'll let the student know if additional information is needed. And then we determine Vermont grant eligibility in April for the upcoming school year. So it may be that Susan does her FAFSA, she's done the Vermont grant application, we don't need anything else from her. She's not really going to hear from VSAC until April of 2022 when we send her a notification that her grant eligibility has been determined. The one other grant I wanted to mention for anyone that may be thinking about attending CCV is the 802 Opportunity Grant. And that VSAC and CCV teamed up to ensure that Vermont students with family incomes $50,000 or less could attend CCV tuition free between the Vermont Grant, the federal Pell Grant, and the 802 Opportunity Grant. So there's not a separate application for this grant. When VSAC determines your eligibility for the Vermont Grant, if you have CCV as one of the schools on your application, VSAC will determine your eligibility for the 802 Opportunity Grant as well, and we will let you know if you are eligible. Susan's going to click, I have read and acknowledged this information, and click continue, and when she does, she would normally be brought back to her to-do list. It's not going to show that to us tonight for some reason, but she will be brought back to a different part of, still within My VSAC. It's just the online grant area, which will show her to-do list, allow her to add schools to her application if she chooses. And then eventually it will allow her to view her award amounts as well. And that's it. Susan's Vermont grant application is complete. So I'm going to, just because that didn't work exactly as I had planned, I am going to log back into My VSAC so we can start from the beginning for the Unified Scholarship application. And hold on just one moment.
Miranda, while you navigate a little bit, I'm just
Yes,
going to answer a few more questions if you don't mind.
perfect.
Perfect. So one of the questions was, when someone submitted their application, they made a mistake on it and they were wondering, they had sent an email to correct it. They're wondering how they can figure out whether or not that correction has been made.
Oh, great question. So depending on what the depending on what you wanted to correct, you may be able to actually view the correction right within your My VSAC account and Work with Grants. So for example, if you were thinking you wanted to correct your home value information, that information and anything that comes in from the FAFSA once we receive it is in Work with Grants under financial information for the student. There's a link in the student's grant area that you could go to view that. If it is something else, say year in college or something like that, you may just need to give us a call and we can confirm, or send us another email and we can confirm that that change has been made. But there's a lot of information in the Work with Grants area that the student can see when they're logged in.
Perfect. So if you're not quite ready, I'll just answer the next question myself, if that works for you.
Okay, I am ready whenever you are.
Oh, then go. Let's go.
Can you see? Can you see the My VSAC Susan Smith page?
No, we are.
You can.
The VSAC
Okay.
Scholarship.
Okay, let me stop sharing and then I'll bring it back up. How about now?
Yes.
Okay,
good.
Great. Did you want to answer that last question though?
No, I'm going to have you keep going because we've
Okay.
only got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure you get through your scholarships.
Okay, let's. So for the Unified Scholarship application, we're going to click on the Work with VSAC Assisted Scholarships. And if you forget, there is a little summary right underneath that tells you what clicking each button, what that will allow you to do. So we are going to click Work with VSAC Assisted Scholarships. And then just like it did with the Vermont Grant application, it's going to bring Susan to a page that gives her a couple of applications that she could complete. And again, she's attending school in 2022, 2023. So she's going to click this 2022, 2023 Unified Scholarship application. And then again, a lot like the Vermont Grant application, this is pre-filled based on the information she provided on her when she registered for My VSAC. So again, we're asking that she just verify that it's correct and then click Save and Continue. And then again, a page or two of instructions. And the very first step that we talked about a little bit earlier was that the student should review the Scholarships for Vermonters booklet. And it's really the student that knows best what if they meet the eligibility requirements of the scholarship. So it's very tempting as parents to read through and be like, hey, I think you should apply for this one, or you should apply for this one, which is fine. We can do that, but the student should also take a look through because maybe there's something we don't necessarily know about them. And it's ultimately the student that is applying for these scholarships. So Susan has done that, and she's decided that she's going to apply for 2 scholarships. She's going to apply for the Let's Grow Kids scholarship for aspiring early educators, and she's going to apply for the PEDS 1 Youth Service Scholarship. So if she wanted to bring up the booklet again, she could by clicking this link. And now she's going to click Save and Continue. So the Unified Scholarship application is designed to gather as much information as possible to ensure that we can determine if a student meets the eligibility requirements that are listed in a particular scholarship description. So some scholarships, as Marilyn mentioned earlier, may require that you live in a certain town, or maybe think about pursuing a certain major. This application is going to ask the student all of those questions so that we can use that to make sure they meet the eligibility requirements for the scholarships they list on here. But this first page is all about her demographics and her mailing address. And we just want to make sure, your students are providing us their best contact information, because we are either going to email or mail information to students quite often. So we want to make sure that we can reach out to you. And again, her email address, something other than a high school. Some scholarships marital status are designed for either single parents or require certain marital status. So that's why that question is on here. And most of them are Vermont residency is required. So again, we are asking for the Vermont, if she is a Vermont resident, and she's clicking save and continue. She has lived in Vermont since August 30th, 2002, and her state of legal residence is Winooski. And again, you can use the drop down, or you can click W to get to the start of the W towns. And then the number of years she's been a resident in this town. Just like with the Vermont Grant application, she can navigate to change her answers using these page links down here. She is verifying that she is a US citizen or eligible non-citizen. And then some of the scholarships in the booklet are designed for specific high schools as well, or a number of high schools within a school district. So we do ask for the high school that she's graduating from, which will be Winooski. And then her graduation status, either she's a high school senior or expects to have her diploma or GED certificate by the end of the year, or she has already graduated from high school. Again, some of the scholarships are designed for high school seniors only or college students only. There's a wide range within the booklet. She's a high school senior. She's going to click save and continue. And this is where she will indicate the program or the degree that she will be pursuing. She's working on her bachelor's degree. Save and continue. And here's where she will tell us her college or university that she'll most likely attend in 2022 to 2023. And you first have to start by filtering by the state that that college is located. Now, we understand for first-year students especially that students are usually applying to multiple colleges, and at the time that they're completing the USA application, they don't know which school. They haven't made a decision on which school they're going to be attending yet. So we recommend you list your first choice school. Or if any of the scholarships that you are applying for require that you attend a Vermont college, then we recommend that you list the Vermont college on here so that you're considered for that scholarship and not automatically disqualified from it before you've decided which school you're going to go to. And then you can always change the school at a later point just by, we have a form online that you can submit, or you can send us an email to do that. So you do have to click the drop down and scroll for this section. So she is going to attend a school in Vermont. And then what that top filter does is it filters this next drop down, which is the whole list of schools. It brings you to Vermont, and then you can scroll down from there. You'll notice there's Utah schools up above. She is going to list Community College of Vermont. And if for some reason you're not able to find the college that you are going to attend, you can check this box, and then we'll ask you on the next page for you to give us the name of the school. And then she expects to graduate from this school in 2026. This is just checking to make sure that if she had already received an associate's degree or not, but she has not, and she has not received her bachelor's degree by next September. And then this is the drop down, select your field of study. You can choose undecided or unknown. Just know that if you're applying for any scholarships that require a certain major, you would not be considered for those scholarships. So she's going to choose business management, and then her year in school. first year. And then her anticipated enrollment status is full-time. So you'll see a lot of these questions are similar to the questions that we asked on the Vermont Grant application. There's just more of them to kind of narrow down the scholarships that she might be considering or eligible for. Just going to click Save and Continue. This page, there are some scholarships that are not listed in the booklet that students can be nominated for, either by a high school guidance counselor or a VSAC outreach counselor. Or if students are a member of the Vermont National Guard, there's also a scholarship available to them. So this page kind of is used to gather information from the student to see if we need to get even more, ask the student even more questions. But she hasn't been nominated or instructed to complete this application other than in the general guidance that you should look at applying for VSAC assisted scholarships. So she's going to say no. She is not a member of the Vermont National Guard. And then these scholarships here are in our booklet, but they need some additional information like family size or child care expenses or additional certifications that we have the student provide as part of this application if she was going to apply for any of these scholarships. So there would be another page after this one that would ask her certain questions to gather that information, but she's not going to. She's going to click no and save and continue. Now, if you've looked at our scholarship booklet, you'll notice that there's a VSAC ID, kind of a little code connected with each scholarship that's listed in there, and it's part or some sort of abbreviation of the scholarship name. So you need that ID from the booklet to select the scholarships here that you want to apply for. And they're all listed by clicking the drop down. You can see them all come up. They're all in alphabetical order. So she was going to apply for the Let's Grow Kids, which is under L, GK, Let's Grow Kids. And then she's a new student. So this is the NS is new student. And you would only know that by looking in the scholarship booklet. So make sure you have that booklet handy. So she's going to select that. And then PEDS 1. And that is under the PEDS, and then PEDS 1 here. Students can list up to 10 scholarships in this section, so she could continue scrolling down listing scholarships that she wants to apply for. Just for the sake of time, we're only going to list those 2. But if she had more than the 5 that show up on this page, she would click yes, that she has more scholarship IDs to add. So you always want to make sure that you've selected at least one scholarship on here. Otherwise, the application is going to come through without any scholarships listed, and there's nothing for us to consider you for. She doesn't have any more, so she's going to click no. And that's it for the application. This is similar certification section. Everything's accurate. She's authorizing information can be shared. This is her application only. No parent information was needed, so parent certification is not needed. She's just going to click yes, that she agrees to all of this above. Click save and continue. And then just like the Vermont Grant application, there is the summary page that shows everything she entered. She wants to review it carefully. She could always go back and change it. And most of this, even after the fact, if it was submitted, she can always change her school and add scholarships using the forms online. But any other changes, she would need to email us and we could make those changes for her. We would just want something in writing. All of this looks good. She's going to click submit. And then what's next? So she's done the USA, and it's the first step in applying for the scholarships. And you might remember I had mentioned that most scholarships, in fact, all of the scholarships, will require at least one other required document, like an essay. So she wants to now double check the scholarships that she's applied for and what required documents she needs and to submit by the deadline. And by clicking continue, it will bring her back to that page. I'm just gonna make it smaller just for a second so you can see here. So that's what the application we just submitted. Right underneath it is upload scholarship documents. So she can click this button. I think I can do this quick enough, Marilyn. Are there any questions that I should answer before?
You know what, go ahead and move forward and I will look and see. There are a number of questions that if there's time, we'd love to get to. If not, we will answer them by sending out a Q&A as an attachment with the presentation. But one question we've got, if students are planning to take a gap year, should they fill out scholarship and grant applications now or fill them out a year from now?
Good question. If the student is absolutely positive that they will be taking the gap year, then they should fill them out a year from now. If there's any question that it's maybe, I would suggest filling them out now. And then, you know, worst case, you decline the scholarship and you let us know for the Vermont grant that you're not enrolled. But if there's that chance, you don't want to miss out on any financial aid that might be available to you.
Perfect. So go ahead and show us how to upload, and then if there's time, we'll grab a couple more questions here.
Great. So right underneath here, there's some tips and links to basically the pages that are in the scholarship booklet. So some tips about recommendation letters and essays. But this button will allow her to upload those required documents. And she can upload pretty much everything: an essay, recommendation letter, transcript. Most scholarships require only, like I said, you only need to upload one of each document unless the scholarship description tells you otherwise. So you only need to send us one essay, and then we'll make sure all of the committees get that information. So this is the uploader page, and it's just some more reminders to her about checking the scholarship description. Only send us one type. And as she scrolls down here, if she had been applying for multiple years, there may be a drop down here that would allow her to select the year, but we know she's a first-year student. And then it allows her to select the document type. She is going to upload an essay general, which most scholarships ask for. And then she navigates on her computer to that location. So she is going to go find that essay on her computer and select it so that it shows up here, tells all of the document formats that are allowed, and then she's going to click submit. And when she does, she'll see a pink box up here that says that essay has been uploaded successfully. And then, so that will disappear as she continues to upload other documents. But down here in this yellow box, this list of documents will continue to display for her each time she logs in, and it'll keep a running tally of which documents were uploaded and when, so that she'll know what she's done. And then when she's done, she'll just click close window. Now, back on her dashboard, you'll remember she clicked work with VSAC assisted scholarships and was brought to this page. After 12 o'clock tomorrow, this page will change, and it will be more of an account scholarship information page for her. So it'll show her name and her demographic information. It'll list the scholarships that she's applied for, and it will also have a page that lists the required documents that she submitted and the required documents that are still outstanding. So it's important for both the Vermont grant to check work with grants often, but also her work with VSAC assisted scholarships, because we won't let her know for any of the scholarships what she's missing. Because scholarships are competitive, it's a little bit more on the student to make sure that they've submitted what they need to. Of course, if she gives us a call and asks, like, did you receive my recommendation letter? We will certainly tell her that, but we won't send her out an email or a letter saying, hey, we haven't gotten it, make sure you submit it by the deadline. And that is it. Susan has submitted the grant application and the unified scholarship application. I just wanted to switch back quickly and just remind you, everybody, about the deadlines. There isn't really a deadline about the Vermont grant, or for the Vermont grant. We accept applications as long as funding is available. And funding is usually available until the spring of the academic year. So for example, this current school year for students that are in college right now, we still have funding available and students can still apply for the grant application and probably can until February or March of 2022. But that deadline for scholarships is a hard deadline, and all the USA and all required documents need to be submitted by midnight, postmarked by midnight, February 11th, 2022.
Miranda, I'm sorry, we're still seeing your unified scholarship application screen.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep, we're trying to get
why that's not working. Put that back up. There's the deadlines.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And then lastly, feel free to call us, email us. The people that are on the phone that will answer your emails or your calls, we all have 14 years and more experience with grants and scholarships and financial aid in general. So you'll be in very good hands. You can reach me through any of those options as well. And then as I had pointed out on vsac.org, there's a lot of information there for you too.
So Miranda, I know that we are right up against the time, but there's a couple more questions that I'd love to have you respond to. And I know some of you may need to leave, and we will send these out as Q&As if you need to drop off. But I'm just going to see if we can take about 5 minutes and see if we can answer a few of these quick questions, I think.
Sure.
So let's see. What form do you fill out first? Does it matter? The FAFSA or the Vermont Grant application?
Great question. It does not matter. Either one, we will match them up however they come in. So the grant application's quick. So if you want to get a quick one out of the way, do that. If you want to get the hardest one out of the way, do the FAFSA. But just know we'll get both and we'll match them both up for you. Perfect.
Another question that is excellent. Do you need to be a high school student to be eligible for scholarship?
No, you do not. In the scholarship booklet, there are many scholarships available for a wide range of students. And can't show it very well here, but there's a black bar above the top of each scholarship description that gives some eligibility, like quick look eligibility requirements. So you can use those to scan through the booklet first. So you'll see things like any student, and you know that that's available to a high school student, a college student, a graduate student. Some may say adult students, so those are only available to adults. So definitely take a look through and you'll find scholarships that should meet your needs.
Perfect. Miranda, this question is one that we see frequently when we're reviewing scholarships, and I'd love to have you just take a moment. So two different people ask this in slightly different ways. Can the same essay written for the Common App be used for the scholarship app? And then if you have letters of recommendation already received from teachers for college applications, can you reuse one of them for the VSAC application?
Good question. So you can, but with kind of a just know this kind of answer. So for the essay specifically, you'll see in the scholarship booklet, there are certain areas that we want the student to touch on in the essay. So we want them to touch on community involvement, financial need, goals, and a couple of other things. And some, depending on the scholarship, if you're only applying for 1 or 2 scholarships, you may be able to tailor your essay even more to those 2 particular scholarships than you might if you were using the essay that you used on the Common App. And the same goes for letters of recommendation. The committee is reading all of these essays and all of these letters of recommendation. And sometimes we can tell that it was written more as an admission essay than a scholarship application essay. Because again, we're looking for the writer of the recommendation letter to speak to certain traits or qualities within the student. And depending on what was written for the admission application, they may not quite hit those points and that the scholarship committee is looking for. So we recommend separate ones, but if you need to, you can.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember you're competing for scholarships. So if someone else took the time to write a really competent essay that hits on every single criteria and all things are equal, that could be the difference in whether or not someone's considered for a scholarship. So it's almost always better to really try to write a fresh essay for your scholarship so that you know you've hit on those points.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that answer. Well, I would like to thank everyone who joined us this evening. I really appreciate the time you spent. I hope you found this helpful. And as Miranda said, we've got contact information up on the screen. Please do not hesitate to reach back out to us if you have any further questions. And early next week, we will send everyone who registered for this event a copy of the presentation as well as a Q&A, a question and answer sheet. And thank you again for your time.